Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the In the Hub podcast, brought to you by Playbox Technology UK. Today we'll be speaking to Amir Taki, director, executive producer and all-round content creator. Amir's career on the front line of television has led him to create Haven Films, a company focusing on filmography and the creation of documentaries. Amir is also in the process of launching a brand new podcast, Icons, which will be available soon. Hope you enjoy. So, welcome to the In the Hub podcast, Amir. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, brilliant.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for coming on, taking the time out today to come and speak to us. It's very much appreciated. So, just before we get started into the kind of main questions, could you just fill us in on how you got involved in the broadcasting industry?
So, late 2008, I was involved with a number of like-minded people who were kind of very fascinated with the idea of content creation. And at that time, broadcasting was really something that was became one, slightly cheaper, and two, has a very powerful way of carrying out information to as many people as you would want. I think at that time, YouTube hadn't even properly established itself. Facebook was kind of in its infancy. And at that time, we really kind of came together and said, I think previously in my life, I was always involved in either in print journalism, when I was very young, of course. But come 2009, in August, we launched a channel on Sky. Now, I was only 24 years old at that time, so very young at that time. And I think we set up the company in February that year. And when we started the channel, it was obviously a huge learning curve. The difficulty of setting up the channel infrastructure, the problems with content creation, and one thing we didn't kind of plan for was the lead time for setting up a fiber optic, and with that time with Virgin, it took us up to like 4 months to get that set up.
Wow. Okay.
They had to do some digging in the area, and the council didn't give permission. So I think for the first 3 months, we had to drive down with tapes.
Yeah.
We would print content on tapes, drive down to a playout center, ingest the content with them, and then give them a schedule. And that's how we used to run. And it was like a manic it wasn't even 24 hours a day. It was just around the clock. So that's how I really got started, to be honest with you. It was I remember, just sleeping on the sofa when I need to be, I remember we were just doing, there wasn't even late nights wasn't even something to talk about. It was a give and go. And, you need to have a very big team to run a TV station, but we were a very small team at that time. But there was, that was how I got started really. And I thought it was brilliant. It was fantastic. And it was that, and the reason, again, it was due to it's a powerful way to talk to people.
Yeah, and it still is. Yeah, I know. Obviously, at the time, it probably wasn't very enjoyable for you, but I do love those kind of scrappy stories of starting out and the things that people have to do to make it work in that first instance. I just love hearing those stories sometimes. So, what is it really about the broadcasting industry and content creation in general that keeps you hooked? If you can even, boil it down into that, or whether it's just a lifestyle for you.
Yeah, it's really down to one thing, the adrenaline buzz, the fact that when you have a live show, and you have these impossible deadlines that you set for yourself. I remember, I think the first year we said we want to do 30 documentaries by the month of Ramadan. And it's like, this daily documentaries, like, and people spend a year or 2 years of this, it's just us as a small team. And that, the buzz of being able to deliver at specific times. I remember there were shows going out at 9 p.m. and at 8:50 we're just transferring to Playbox, and it was just living on the edge. And you go home and you're still buzzing, you can't sleep, and you're back again. And it's the relentless deadlines. You finish one season and you say, oh, I'm done now, and you say, whoa, I've got 2 months left to finish another season. And it's relentless. It doesn't stop. And obviously, we were not just involved in content creation. We were involved in fundraising. We were involved in public relations. We were involved in, compliance and Ofcom and how to deal with that. It's another, it's a massive ball game. You need to be able to understand the diligent, nuanced messages that you need to put out. And there's anything that is offensive or somewhat subjective, or not subjective, but offensive to some people, that has to be omitted. So that all those factors just meant that you were just living very high all the time, just buzzing all the time.
Yeah. So it really sounds like that fast-paced lifestyle was something that attracted you, basically. And it's, all that pressure and stuff like that, but it creates great content in the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I said, at that time, most content was found on television. There was no YouTube, and there were people not making content on Instagram. It was just YouTube emerging, and even YouTube at the time was just kind of in its infancy. And we became a source of content, and people. I remember our first live show, we had like 60 callers in like an hour, and it was just a normal guy talking about but it's the first time we were doing this. And we had to sublease a studio and park royal and run around, and it was just a manic. Camera starts swinging in the middle of the show. All these kind of stuff happened. There was one time we had the camera didn't get locked into the tripod properly, so it started to tilt up slightly. And because it was green screen, the guy started flying basically, because on green screen, it just started going up on the set. And we said, you got the magic carpet or something. Something happened there. Well, it's really good. As I said, there was a lot of experiences, a lot of challenges, but the fast life, the fast pace with broadcasting and the satisfaction that you get from every output that you put. I remember we had a television, I had a TV in my room, and obviously the playbox was 20 meters down, and the MCR room, and I had so I can wherever we approve and goes into the playbox, I can see it come back down from Sky. And that was it's like, that's something different, because sometimes you can produce something really amazing and nobody sees it. You try to sell it and you try to pitch it someone and no one buys it, and you start to get disheartened. But with broadcasting, it's there. And we had a harmonized team. When we made content, we made sure that we made it to the level that would go out. We didn't hit and miss. It was, you aim for something and you try to get it done. So that gave us a big satisfaction as well.
So I guess what we've been talking about then is Ahelbe TV, and that's the channel that you guys set up. So for anyone who might not already know, what was the channel all about, and what was your involvement in that project?
So Ahelbe TV is a channel that is primarily a faith-based channel, promotes the Muslim faith, which is Islam. And at that time, in the backdrop of 9/11 and 7/7 and so you can see all the negative stories that have been you find on some of the tabloids who stereotype all Muslims. And it came to a time where we said, Muslims always complain at times, we don't have a fair share of our presentation, we don't get a chance to speak and air our mind, and the media's airbrushing us or painting us the same brush, and so sometimes I don't kind of propose that the only way that Muslims should articulate their views, it should be through niche faith-based channels. It should be, Muslims should also get into mainstream channels and other broadcasters to be able to, because if you're not on the table, people then assume about you. You have to be on the table to be able to be considered. And so the path that we took was to set up a kind of a faith-based channel to be able to, one, speak to your community, and two, be able to dispel misconceptions and misinformation that's being uttered against you. So that was the kind of the two, obviously being in English, a lot of channels that are produced in the UK, sometimes they're produced in the native languages. So obviously you have sometimes Urdu and Swahili and whatnot. And so we wanted to appeal to the younger generation, and whoever comes across a channel, obviously being on Sky compared to other platforms, sometimes it's have normal decoders and you have to punch in a frequency code. And you don't really do that unless you own that, unless you know that channel. Whereas on Sky, we had 842. We were a number that people could flick up and suddenly find us. You had an EPG that would outline your program schedule. You could see all the synopsis being posted, everything. And we were just, I think we were towards the tail end of the schedule of the EPG listing. But I think after us was either the gambling channels or something. So sometimes people that are gambling, Islam, we sometimes obviously Islam. So sometimes by accident he's gambling and he goes, oh, what's this Muslim channel? And he might just come and say something. I think one time we had an email. One guy, I think he says I was gambling, and suddenly I flick down and I see you guys, and I go, oh, look at this woman, she's oppressed because she was wearing a veil, on the screen. And he goes, this woman is oppressed, and the lady subconsciously, obviously it couldn't be planned. the lady says,
Yeah.
people think I'm oppressed. And he said, oh, this woman's talking to me. This guy, I'm sure he wasn't hallucinating. This really happened to him. He's like, the woman said to me, you think I'm oppressed, but I choose to wear this to, protect myself and to be, chaste. And I want people to judge me for who I am, not how I look. And then he was like, wow, this lady's speaking to me. And then, so he emailed in, he was very happy that he had this experience. I think it was a nice story there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's that people can stumble across it in that way. And like you said, it helps to, dispel some of those misconceptions and stuff like that. So I know it all sounds as if it was really fast paced, obviously, and what you guys were doing. Was there ever a kind of time that you actually got to sit back and think, wow, we've done this, and see it listed on the program guide on Sky? And just look at it and say, this is what we've created?
I think it was August 13th, 2009, when we launched on Sky. And then, funny enough, when we did launch on Sky, you had to pay a 3-month deposit. I think it was about £60,000. And at that time, we didn't even have the money. We had to ask people, and we got the money eventually. We got it. And then they told us that, I think Sky releases channels every Monday. I think something like that. So even though we signed on Thursday, come Monday, we were live. And then, ironically enough, is that when we did go live, we never had a Sky TV to see what's going on. So we ran out of the office, wild, crazy men just running around all the group and say, we need to find a place to watch this channel. Because how do we know that this is actually working? It's like this kind of surreal atmosphere. They go, yeah, we started broadcasting your content and we don't know, we can't see it. So we went to this restaurant in Croydon called Merch Masala. They sell Indian food and curry and whatnot. And then we said, can we have the menu, please? And they said, yeah. So before we order, do you have Sky? He goes, yeah, but they were showing cricket. There was it was the Oval or something.
Yeah.
So guys, and everyone's watching the cricket. I think it was India versus. I said, look, can you please do us a favor? We would order, but only if you can switch it to 842, if you don't mind. Just to kind of see. And we watched it. I was like, wow, finally something that we could see. We were looking at our computers for months. These programs that we're producing is now in a restaurant in Croydon. It's like. Yeah. It was really and obviously after years of after almost 10 years that I was there, when I travel around the world, obviously I don't present on television, but the presenters that were with me, or when we go out, when you mention, they see them go, oh, I've seen you before on TV. And when you do that, you get to see the far reach the channel had. Sometimes when you're just producing content, and you're putting it out there, you don't really get enough time to absorb the feedback. And because you're always locked in, you're working, you're not really getting involved with the people. And whenever you travel and people say, I love that program, I really like that point that you guys made there, I was like, wow, someone's watching. And sometimes you really forget sometimes, because obviously, until obviously you make a mistake, and then everyone starts, calling you back and saying you made a big mistake, like in content. But when things are going well, it stays a bit quiet. But when we traveled, we really got good, amazing feedback, and that really inspired us. The fact that people said you changed my life, you gave me hope, you inspired me, and even though the channel obviously was a faith-based channel, but the messages that it focused on was equality, tolerance, coexistence, living an ethical life, and it wasn't necessarily only for Muslims. Anyone could watch it and say, these are good messages I can pick up from. I remember once a non-Muslim woman called in during one of our shows, and she goes, I think it was her son was on the phone. She goes, I want to donate all the money I have in this piggy bank that I have. I said, okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Why? She goes, and the mum comes on. She goes, I'm really happy that my son's watching something that is not evolved around salacious, like sexual content or content that promotes, kind of unethical content, and you guys are trying to promote something which is very peaceful and very loving, and something like that. Things like that really kind of always inspire you to continue to keep making content. It was lovely.
Yeah, it's nice to have that kind of stuff to hit home, isn't it? Especially like you said, when you're being locked in and creating content and stuff like that. It's actually great to hear what people think sometimes. But that story about obviously being in Croydon and getting the guy to change the cricket over, that was fantastic.
I was just going to add a point here. Funny enough, is after that Merch Masala scenario, the guy with us, he was our accounts manager, but he is not very fond of spicy food. But because we were ordering a lot of food, we had to order food, right? So we had these kebab rolls, and they were a bit spicy. So this gentleman, he started consuming far too many without really thinking. He was just he was taken back by the. Long story short, he ended up in hospital the next day.
No. Those rolls should have come with a warning, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's not used to. Sometimes Arabs, they're not used to spicy food, and that's kind of the culture. Whereas, subcontinent people, they love the hot spice. And it's a culture clash for you. If you haven't had it before, it can leave you.
It creeps up on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. More so than you know.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So when you were working with Ahelbe TV, were you always kind of involved in the content creation? And I guess I kind of want to link that to why you now kind of take on content creation full time and how you kind of got into that.
So my role in Ahelbe TV primarily was I was the MD, managing director, CEO, director, whatever you want to call it. But I was head down. But by nature, I was a production guy. I loved content, and that's why I didn't really like preparing budgets and whatnot. I would leave that to the accounts people and just kind of I would encourage the fundraising team or the business people to do their thing. But I was more into content creation. That was my I can't I've been doing it for almost since I was 16, always involved in making something, using, as I said before, I was in print journalism. My degrees in television production, and everything that I did was just pure content creation. And my role was, as an executive producer there, was I was commissioning. So I would either commission external producers, I would the producers that we had on in the office, I would work with them, develop ideas, develop concepts. Once we have the idea, once we visualize it and we say, look, go and execute, go and find the talents, go and find the people, make it work. And that was what I did, and I loved it. And obviously being in a kind of a faith-based channel, when it's like had like a charity feel to it, the money that you would get as a salary wasn't amazing. It was probably a fraction of what you'd get paid in the industry, but it was just at such a young age, I had accumulated so much experience and so much know-how in that period, and I loved every second of it. I loved the fast pace, the turnaround, and obviously you'd love more time to make things a bit more perfect, to kind of finalize projects and get the color correction in and get that sound leveling done properly. And sometimes you can't, but what we did is we get out on TV and then we just fine touch it before we put on YouTube. And YouTube, once you put on YouTube, you can't really take it down after. It becomes yeah, I think we have like almost 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. Our documentary page on YouTube has got 70,000 subscribers. We did our flagship documentary series on ISIS that we did. We filmed, how ISIS are kind of defaming Islam and what they're doing. And sometimes, people said it was a sectarian war. Some people said that, it was a few misconceptions. People said that this is, these are Muslims doing it, and we had to go around. We did a whole debunk of this, a 6-part series. We went to Iraq. We filmed in northern Iraq. We filmed in dangerous areas. We got awards for these documentaries. I think one of the clips that we put on got about 5 million views. So it was like, and sometimes I would lead, I would direct some of the films, I would produce some of the films myself, I would even film some of them, because sometimes people didn't want to go and film, in an area that was just being liberated against ISIS. Like, oh, that's not my thing. And sometimes when you have an idea and you only have one chance to shoot it, you can't send somebody else in full confidence. You want to make sure that you go yourself, and you're holding the camera. Vision, yeah. So if you leave me with a camera and drop me somewhere, and I'll come back to you within 3 weeks with a documentary. I'll find a story, I'll cut it down, I'll start building a narrative. And that's the way I am. That's what I love doing.
No, it's some fantastic work, and well done to you guys for getting the word out there and doing that. So Amir, just moving to Haven Films, which is your current project and your current company that you've got going on. What exactly is Haven Films, and what does your kind of day-to-day life look like when you're creating content for Haven Films?
So I left in March 2019. So it's been almost 2 years now that I've left the channel. And although I still keep contact with the people there, and I'm very supportive of the work they do, but I thought that, it's time for a new challenge. And for anybody being 10 years in a place, it's very, obviously, one, it's difficult for you to leave, but at the same time, it's also needed to challenge yourself. And I felt I needed a challenge. Reaching the now I was 34 at that time, or 35, and I needed to kind of see, look, this is now a certain age of my life now. I need to kind of do something different. And when I started Haven Films, it was kind of with the perception of producing more bespoke, high-level content to broadcasters, either Ahelbe TV or other neighboring channels, or even bigger channels, if that's possible. But by the time I kind of started at the beginning, this COVID when it came and kind of started in December, it kind of, everything was put, most broadcasters were interested in kind of commissioning major work at that time. And so I started working with a number of organizations to produce content for them. So to be it charities. So I started, I'm doing a few things at the moment. So I'm launching a podcast called Icons, and we've interviewed 4 celebrities. I think one's called Mark Billy Billingham. He runs the SAS Australia program, very famous show.
Yes, yeah.
You run kind of a you run other celebrities through an SAS course, and they drive them mad. And so this Icon's about, really, it's about finding out what people, the stories, the challenges behind these people's achievements. How did they get there? What did they do every day? And what was the challenges they faced? And and what is the message for other people? We got, for example, Bill Conti, the music composer behind Rocky.
Yeah.
The rest now.
Iconic, yeah.
We got him. We had Rashida Ali, I think Muhammad Ali's daughter. She gave real insight about Muhammad Ali's life and what he was doing.
So already some absolutely fantastic guests then already. Yeah, that's brilliant.
And I'm working with a number of charities now to produce videos on vaccine misinformation. So there's kind of a huge drive about vaccine misinformation. And, I've heard a lot, there's 5G and all these new nanoparticles, and they're going to control you. And so we've spoken to doctors, we interview doctors and community leaders and medical professions, and they dismantle and debunk these videos. So we've got a big contract that we're working on now, producing a lot of videos on that. I'm also working on a documentary on homeschooling. A lot of parents have taken their kids out from schools, primarily because of COVID. Obviously, there's a huge increase, but previously there's issues of bullying, name calling, and some parents weren't happy about. There's even this article that came out on The Guardian, or this whole issue about sexual abuse within, students getting sexually abused by other students, and now even teachers are saying that they're facing sexual abuse cases by students. These like kind of sexual innuendos and sly words and people dropping things. And so I want to look at the dangers of homeschooling and the advantages of the homeschooling. And now there's emergence of online schools that teach you through kind of virtual classrooms. And so I'm just trying to I'm doing this documentary on this issue now. I'm working on it, hopefully within maybe a couple of months. The other project I just finished now is on autism, and looking at, especially within new communities in the UK, and how they don't understand how when a family is facing autism, the challenges that, if they've got a child that is autistic, how do you deal with that family? How do you welcome them to the community? What are the problems that people face? And, sometimes they say, why is your child so loud? Why doesn't he sit down? And sometimes, these things are not in the parents' control. So we profiled a number of cases. We sat with parents, and we interviewed them about the issues. And it was very emotional. A lot of people faced kind of the first time they were speaking about this, and they get to really articulate and air their concerns, and they feel that there's a lack of empathy sometimes. But we try to create a story about that to kind of, give people a better insight.
That's some really important work then, isn't it? It's almost like you kind of, obviously with Haven Films, you've just thought, we're going to be targeting, hard hitting topics, and we're going to make it count, basically. We're going to make important documentaries about issues that are going on at the moment. So I think that's brilliant. And I'll definitely keep an eye out for when those projects do release. So Amir, I just wanted to quickly ask about kind of the topic of broadcasting during the month of Ramadan. So how important are the channels like Ahelbe TV to the Muslim communities during the month of Ramadan? Also, of course, are there any kind of challenges in broadcasting during the month of Ramadan?
So Ramadan for Muslim channels is probably the biggest season of the year, because one, it's a 30-day period, and Muslims normally, they would hold their fast. They would abstain from food and drink from dawn to sunset, which last summer or the summer before, we hit 18 hours a day. And so for them to break their fast, they would listen to the call of the prayer. Now, obviously, London doesn't have any minarets and mosques and, people calling out. So they switch on the channel. they put on the TV channels and they wait, in a kind of, because imagine that's a prime time television. Everyone's sitting down,
Yeah.
full of prayer, and he's got
Yeah.
morsels of food in his hands. Like, I'm just waiting to, when you hear the first cry, and I'm.
That's it. Yeah, is it? Yeah. I can imagine actually. Yeah, I think that would become kind of like a household staple during the
Yeah,
month,
and then
wouldn't it? Like you'd get the TV on at that time, and you'd wait.
yeah, so you have so we do like the build up. We have the supplications and the Quran recitations, and you get people into the mood. Everybody gets really emotional, and then we do the call to prayer, and then we have, sometimes people go and pray before they eat, but that call signifies it's time for you to break your fast. And people obviously, it's because you sometimes obviously, back if they're back in their countries, they would have a very, the atmosphere is different. But obviously everyone's at home, especially last year and the year before, because of especially last year with COVID, really, people, they couldn't go anywhere. There was
Of
no there
course,
was
yeah.
no way you could go out and go to a center or go to a mosque. So this was a way. So channels create an atmosphere for families who can't go to centers, or who basically are too old or too ill, or just want to stay home and watch TV. So Ramadan is very important, but also something very important about Ramadan, from my experience at least, is that I know channels, they spend 3-4 times the amount of budget. They allocate 3 to 4 times the amount of budget for content than other months, because obviously it's season time. Christmas, you can imagine, main broadcasters would spend a lot of money on films and kind of get the best content out on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, and same thing for Ramadan. Muslim channels spend a lot of money on producing high quality content. At the same time, they also invite charities to fundraise on TV, and it's become an interesting phenomena recently. I think recent stats call that almost £100 million is given to charity by Muslims in the month of Ramadan. It's a huge
Yeah,
amount of money.
it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously, on one aspect, that Islam encourages charity as part of the tenets of the faith, but at the same time, the whole point of fasting and abstaining from food is supposed to remind you of the poor, and to kind of remind you of how people what people are going through that don't have food. And suddenly you realize that when you see a video of an orphan on TV, and you feel compelled to sponsor him for a year, because him or her for a year, because that just kind of that's the whole point of really, or abstaining from food, is to kind of remember the people that need it most. So you have one aspect of high quality content is outed in Ramadan. At the same time, there's a huge fundraising kind of drive, and channels. They raise. I remember one charity told me that our record is 1.2 million in one program that we raised. So that's a lot of money. That's almost a budget for a year for some
Oh, that's
channels, really.
incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, it's fantastic because people that need it most, they're getting what they need, and Ramadan is a real time for sharing and giving, and so channels really make the most of it. And as I said, content. Suddenly you have 16 hours of brand new content every day. Obviously, some channels can't sustain that. They produce 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day. Otherwise, it starts. But there's live shows till, like, and normally people run their live shows till dawn, 3 o'clock in the morning, because everyone's still awake. They've just had a big meal and they
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
So they're drinking a lot of water, and then they stay up, and then suddenly everyone's buzzing on TV. Everyone's, excited. But it's, again, if you want to talk fast paced, then Ramadan is the time. If you
I can
That was the
imagine. Yeah.
epitome of kind of real kind of drive to produce and make an impact.
Yeah. No, I kind of put that in. I've always just been curious about, what the kind of the motive is during that time, and just how hard you guys are working. But of course, there's that charitable spin on things, isn't it? And it's all about that kind of charitable giving. So I can imagine that it is. Yeah, it's quite a important time for channels. So Amir, this is a question that we ask at the end of every podcast, and it can be quite a hard one, can be quite a tough one. But in one word, if you could condense it down into that, what do you envision for the future of the broadcasting industry?
The one I have is adaptation. I think broadcasting is adapting as we speak, with the rise of kind of streaming on demand, and YouTube and whatnot. And I think broadcasting still remains important in sports and the live programming and news. You can't replace that now. You can't go to. I mean, obviously, Amazon tried to do some football, but in front of a TV set and waiting, for a game, or for Olympics, or we had today the death of Prince Philip, for example. So these people go straight to TV. No one goes to YouTube to look for like the latest news. There's a huge demand for that's more than a word, but I just
no, that's perfect. I think adaptation's a really good way of summing it up.
Yeah, I just kind of one thing to add is I'm kind of although I do some commercial work and do some short videos, but my kind of passion is documentaries, and that's what I'm kind of very passionate about that. And I've got a lot of opportunities coming forward, and that's something that I believe that documentaries is kind of one of the best ways to summarize and kind of consolidate a very complicated topic into 1 hour or 90 minutes or whatever, 5 minutes or half an hour. But you can really squeeze in a lot of information, and people don't have the patience now to watch, read a book or like to take a course. Sometimes to create a very kind of visual experience, where documentaries, you have music and you have B-roll and obviously visual impacts and suspense and drama all into 1 hour. It's still a very powerful. And if you look at obviously I can't compare with Attenborough's series, but they are rated on IMDb as one of the highest kind of most popular programs, and that's compared to series, other main kind of so they still have a documentary still has kind of an important footing.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, you've only got to look at the popularity, like you said, of David Attenborough's stuff, and the occasional ones that get released onto Netflix every other month or so, and they create a massive buzz. So I think you're completely right there. I think documentaries are the still a staple, to be honest. It's still a way to go. So Amir, how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about anything that you're up to?
So I'm although I claim to be active on social media, but
we all do.
It's very time consuming. Yeah. So I have my handle on Twitter is Amir Taki, similar to Instagram. I'm also available on Facebook. My website is havenfilms.org, and my email address is on the website is contact@havenfilms.org.
Awesome. So Amir, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today and speaking to us. It's been really appreciated. I know it was great to hear some of those stories from the early days as well.
It's a pleasure, Neil. Thank you for having me. I really loved it, and I hope I kind of didn't drag on too long.
It's perfect. Thank you.